Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Shang. China's Communist Party already wields outsized influence over Hong Kong's political landscape. Its allies have long controlled a committee that handpicks the territory's leader. Its loyalists dominate the Hong Kong legislature. It ousted 4 of the city's elected opposition lawmakers last year. Now, China plans to impose restrictions on Hong Kong's electoral system to root out candidates the Communist Party deems disloyal, a move that could block democracy advocates in the city from running for any elected office. These efforts are transforming Hong Kong's freewheeling, often messy partial democracy into a political system more closely resembling mainland China's authoritarian system, which demands almost total obedience. In other words, Beijing wants Hong Kong to be run by patriots and will not let the Hong Kong government rewrite the territory's laws as previously expected, but will do so itself. Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam affirmed the plan, saying that many years of intermittent protests over Hong Kong's political future had forced the national government to act. When Britain returned Hong Kong to Chinese sovereignty in 1997, the territory was promised a high degree of autonomy, in addition to the preservation of its capitalistic economic system and the rule of law. But in the decades since, many residents have grown wary of Beijing's encroachment on their freedoms and unfulfilled promises of universal suffrage. The Communist Party has been alarmed by increasingly open resistance to its rule in the city and has blamed what it calls hostile foreign forces bent on undermining its sovereignty. These tensions escalated in 2019 when masses of Hong Kong residents took to the streets in protests for months, calling in part for universal suffrage. They also delivered a striking rebuke of Beijing by handing pro-democracy candidates a stunning victory in local district elections that had long been dominated by the establishment. The latest planned overhaul seeks to prevent such electoral upset and, more important, will also give China a much tighter grip on the 1,200-member committee that will decide early next year who will be the city's chief executive for the next 5 years. Different groups in Hong Kong society, bankers, lawyers, accountants, and others will vote this year to choose their representatives on the committee. The urgency of the Communist Party's move suggests a worry that pro-democracy sentiment in Hong Kong is so strong that the party could lose control of the committee unless it disqualifies democracy advocates from serving. Siu-kai is a senior advisor to the Chinese leadership on Hong Kong policy. He said, China's Communist Party-run national legislature was expected to push forward electoral overhaul when it gathers in Beijing for its annual session starting on March 5th. The National People's Congress would probably move to create a high-level group of government officials with the legal authority to investigate every candidate for public office and determine whether each candidate is genuinely loyal to Beijing. The plan would cover candidates for nearly 2,000 elected positions in Hong Kong, including the committee that chooses the chief executive, the legislature, and the district councils. The new election law now being drafted will not be retroactive, Mr. Lau said, and the current district councillors will keep their seats as long as they adhere to the law and swear loyalty to Hong Kong and China. Beijing officials and state news media outlets have delivered a drumbeat of calls over the past month for Hong Kong to be run exclusively by people who are patriots. To Beijing, that term is narrowly defined as loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party. China's top leader Xi Jinping raised the issue in late January with Mrs. Lam, telling her that having patriots govern Hong Kong was the only way to ensure the city's long-term stability. And on Tuesday, the Hong Kong government said it would introduce a bill requiring district councillors to take loyalty oaths and would ban candidates from standing for office for 5 years if they were deemed insincere or insufficiently patriotic. The government's moves would further chill free speech and political debate in the city. Since Beijing imposed the national security law, the city's authorities have used it for a wide-ranging crackdown. They have arrested more than 100 people, including activists, politicians, an American lawyer, and a pro-democracy publisher. Before last year's security law, Beijing generally let the Hong Kong legislature draft and enact laws governing the territory. In a sign of how drastic a departure the new approach is from previous years, some Hong Kong politicians initially expressed skepticism that Beijing would once again bypass local officials to enact legislation. Starting in February, Hong Kong residents can apply for a new visa giving them the chance to become British citizens. But China and the Hong Kong government hit back by saying they would no longer recognize the BNO passport as a valid travel document from Sunday, January 31st. BNO is a special status created under British law in 1987 that specifically relates to Hong Kong. Britain's foreign ministry said it was disappointed but not surprised by Beijing's decision not to recognize the BNO passport. China's move is largely symbolic, as Hong Kong residents would not normally use their BNO passports to travel to the mainland. A BNO passport holder in Hong Kong could still use their Hong Kong passport or identity card. Beijing's imposition of a national security law in Hong Kong in June last year prompted Britain to offer refuge to almost 3 million Hong Kong residents eligible for the BNO passport from January 31st. The scheme, first announced last year, opens on Sunday, January 31st and allows those with British national status to live, study, and work in Britain for 5 years and eventually apply for citizenship. UK government forecasts say the new visa would attract more than 300,000 people and their dependents to Britain. Beijing said it would make them second-class citizens. Britain and China have been arguing for months about what London and Washington say is an attempt to silence dissent in Hong Kong after huge pro-democracy protests in 2019 and 2020. Britain says it is fulfilling a historic and a moral commitment to the people of Hong Kong after Beijing imposed a new security law. It is still highly uncertain how many people will actually take up the offer. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly.